Success isn't just about what you achieve. It's about living a life that reflects your values and priorities. Welcome to Engineer Your Success, the podcast that helps you lead with intention and live fulfilled.
Have you ever been in a conversation at work that you could feel that it was going sideways and you just don't know how to stop it? Maybe it was a team member who came in defensive after a missed deadline. Maybe it was a difficult client call. It could have even been one of those dreaded performance conversations that turned into something else entirely. Most technical leaders aren't trained for that moment. They are trained to solve problems. They're trained to use equations. They are trained to use different frameworks and logic. But none of that really looks at how do you manage the emotions that come in the midst of those relationships. But what if emotions were treated as another data point that's readable, predictable, and manageable? And once you know how to look at it, well, that's what today's guest is going to get into. He spent 22 years as a trial lawyer before walking away from millions to become a peacemaker. He eventually took his methods into the most violent prison yards in California and proved that they work. He now teaches leaders, among other things, to stop any argument in 90 seconds. So today we're going to explore what engineering leaders need to know about the human side of leadership and why the skills nobody taught you in school might be the ones that matter most. Doug Noll, I want to welcome you to the Engineer Your Success podcast.
Hey, James, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this ever since then. But before we get on, everybody who's listening, give this guy a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify or wherever you want. The only way he gets notoriety is because listeners like you tell him how great he is, so everybody else can do that. So 5-star review, don't screw around, do it right now, and we can jump into it.
Doug, I love it, man. Thank you so much. You were a trial lawyer for 22 years. So by any measure, you were successful, right? So what made you walk away?
It's kind of a long story. It didn't happen just overnight. It was about a 10-year evolution. But what really made me walk away was the sense that although I was very good as a trial lawyer, and my work was in commercial and business litigation, handling high stakes, high dollar, complex matters, is that I just wasn't serving a lot of people. And I just decided in mid-career, in my almost 50 years old, that I wanted to serve more people. And that led me into going back to school and earning my master's degree in peacemaking and conflict studies. And that completely changed my life and my worldview. And that's when I decided, well, I didn't decide. My partners and I could not come to agreement about what I wanted to do. I was the second highest earner in the firm. They didn't want the goose to stop laying the golden egg. I was tired of supporting a bunch of non-productive people, and I did not want to try cases anymore. But they didn't want a peacemaker in the firm. So I gave them a week's notice and walked out, left $10 million on the table. Wow. And that's how it started. Today I help more people in a week than I helped in 22 years as a lawyer.
So take me to the moment that you decided to leave. I mean, you've talked about how you've looked at this, but is there a defining moment that kind of crystallizes when you made that decision?
Well, I think what happened, the way it really got started was in the late 90s, before all of this occurred. I was in a courtroom cross-examining somebody, and the thought struck me, what the heck am I doing in here? And I think the reason that I had that thought goes back to the mid-'80s when I took up the martial arts.
Okay.
And by the time I was 40, I was awarded my second degree black belt in a Northern Chinese animal style. And my teacher told me to study Tai Chi. Well, Tai Chi has two interesting paradoxes. One is the softer you are, the stronger you are. And the other is the more vulnerable you are, the more powerful you are.
Okay.
Soft to be strong, vulnerable to be powerful. Did not compute with me at that time. Hardcore trial lawyer, second degree black belt. Nah, it's all BS. Well, I kept studying Tai Chi and practicing and learning, and eventually that paradox seeped into my soul. And so I think what happened was I was finally hit me in that trial that I don't belong in here anymore. And I think that was the moment when things started to shift. I had no idea what was going to happen after that. And had you told me then that I would be where I am today, I would just shake my head in disbelief and say, that's just not going to happen. But I went back to school, and I had heard about a new master's degree program at a local university. And I went back to school and went through this amazing experience of learning about human conflict, and then started practicing peacemaking as a mediator. And then in 2005, discovered the skill that changed my life, which is how to listen to and name emotions. And 2 years after that, in 2007, the science revealed what was going on, brain scanning studies out of UCLA. That led me into co-founding Prison of Peace in 2009, 2010 with my colleague Laurel Cochran for 10 years. I worked in maximum security prisons here in California and also in Connecticut, training, serving life sentences, how to stop prison violence by teaching them to be mediators and peacemakers.
Yeah, so you went from cross-examination, having that epiphany type moment, thinking about the number of people that you're actually helping, to studying to be a peacemaker or mediation, and then going into the prisons to help bring peace to what I would think is one of the most violent places where people can be.
That's right. I mean, I remember walking into Valley State Prison for Women here in California, which at that time was considered the largest, most violent women's prison in the world, and standing in front of 15 women, all of them lifers, some serving life without possibility of parole, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, angry, cynical, skeptical, and also very skeptical of me because I mean, I'm big white Anglo-Saxon lawyer guy. I was the epitome of evil in their eyes, right? But they were curious. And so we started working with them. Laurel and I started working with them. And the transformations started to occur about 5 weeks in. I'll tell you a really quick story. This is a story I like to tell a lot. It's the very first story I pull out of the prison project because it is so powerful. So 5 weeks in, I wasn't sure whether or not we were making a difference. And then we walk in one day, and believe me, teaching in prisons is not like teaching in a hotel conference room, right? Or a corporate center. It's a very, very different experience. So we walk into this dingy conference room where we're doing training, and one of our students, Sarah, is sitting over in the corner. She's quietly sobbing. Very unusual behavior. So we walk over, and Laurel kneels next to her and says, "What's going on?" And she tells us a story. She says, "I've been in prison for 18 years. I killed a family of 4 as an alcoholic drunk driver. When I was sentenced to prison, I had to give up my 3-year-old son to my sister to raise, and I've written him every single week for 18 years. He's never called. He's never visited. He's never written back. The only way I know anything about what's going on in his life is through my weekly calls with my sister. Last week, I decided to write him a different kind of letter based on what you have been teaching us, namely what he must be feeling to have an alcoholic killer imprisoned as a mother. Anger, shame, unloved, abandoned, rejected, frustrated, all the emotions that I could think of that he must have been feeling all these 18 years. And I wrote him that letter and just described everything that I thought he was feeling. Today, for the first time in 18 years, I got a letter back from him. And at the end of the letter, he said, "Mom, I love you. I'm bringing my girlfriend, and we'll be visiting you in 3 weeks."
Wow.
And she started crying again and holding the letter. You could see that the ink was tear stained and her thumb was over the word love, like she couldn't believe it was real. And when I heard that story, I was stunned. I said, "Oh my God, what are we doing in here? How are we changing lives?" And that was the first story of hundreds that I heard over the next 10 years. So it's pretty powerful stuff.
Wow. That's really powerful. So
So here's the lesson that I took away from all of that is that the skills that we're teaching and the skills that I want to share today are transformative in the deepest ways, and they're counterintuitive and counternormative. I mean, engineers are people who go into engineering because they don't want to deal with the messiness of emotion. They like the predictability of, as you said, equations and formulas and figuring stuff out and solving problems and designing stuff that's not going to break, designing things that are going to work and make our lives better and all that cool stuff.
Mhm.
But emotions are not in that equation.
Yeah.
And what I would like to say is, as you said in the introduction, emotions are data, just like numbers on a spreadsheet. And once you know how to read the data and interpret it and use it, it's no longer messy. The patterns become just as predictable as structural vectors on designing a bridge. And all you have to do is know what to look for and how to look for it and how to respond to it. And all of a sudden, all of that messiness that we're all afraid of, somebody getting mad at us or blowing up or shutting down or rejecting us, whatever it might be, all of it becomes extremely predictable. And we have tools, just like you have in engineering, that can address it and stop it and make people calm down, re-engage their prefrontal cortex, and be able to talk again.
You've told us the power of those tools. So let's start walking people through what are the tools? How do you use them? Let's unpack that.
I think the easiest way to approach this is to just remember two words: you feel, and then follow it with whatever emotion the person seems to be experiencing at the moment. So you feel angry, you feel frustrated, you feel disrespected, you don't feel heard, you feel invisible, you don't feel appreciated or supported, and you're really anxious and worried and concerned. And if you just take those words that I just stated right there, less than 10 words, that's enough to get you through 99% of all difficult situations you're going to face with. Because we all share and we all experience the same emotions, every single one of us. And the problem is that because our brains are locked in their brain cases, right, we don't realize that other people are experiencing the exact same thing that we're experiencing and have the sense of loneliness and being isolated and alienated. So when I name your emotions, I'm doing something very special. First, I'm listing you into existence so that you feel heard and visible. And at a biophysiological level, what I'm doing is inhibiting the centers of your brain associated with negative emotion, while at the same time, I'm reactivating the prefrontal regions of your brain associated with emotional self-regulation. So literally, by naming your emotions, I'm calming your brain down, and you can't help it. It happens automatically. Every human brain will automatically calm down when you name feelings. And that's what the brain scanning studies show. And this is all based on neuroscience. So
So what happens, right? Because there's going to be somebody who's listening that's going to say, "How dare you tell me how I feel?" And I know
that
you've
is
run
number
into
3.
that.
That is number 3 on my objection list. People give that to me all the time. Here's the thing. The reason that objection comes up is because we live in a culture that tells us that emotions are bad, emotions make us weak, emotions are messy, they're evil, they're irrational. And we're conditioned in this from the time we're children. Remember when you were running around at 3 years old and you fell down and skinned your knee and started to cry? What were you told? Suck it up. It doesn't
Yeah,
hurt.
you gotta
Don't
stop
cry.
crying.
That's right. And we are emotionally invalidated from the time we can start talking. We're told not to cry. We're told it doesn't hurt. We're told not to be angry at the dinner table. We're told it's not okay to feel this way. So we are never taught how to be emotionally competent. And our parents, although they love us very much, only know what they know from their parents and
Yeah.
from their parents generationally all the way back. So we were never trained how to do this stuff. So it makes us uncomfortable when we're dealing with emotions because there's a lot of anxiety we have around it. We were rejected when we were emotional as children, and we're emotionally incompetent today because we don't know what to say or what to do or how to act. So it provokes a fear reaction in us.
Yeah.
And so
I can
that's
see.
why people say, well, wait a minute. If somebody said that to me, that really pissed me off if somebody told what I feel. All that is the fear of childhood programming coming up and saying, I'm afraid to do this. The
Well,
truth is,
I think there's also something else that's happening too, Doug, and I don't have all of the scientific words or to tell you what's going on in the brain, but it's like if they feel that you're putting them in a box, it's like that you're trying to control them. There is that fear and the hurt of, yes, you're naming something, you're poking
interesting.
something that's here, but there's also this issue that happens when people feel that you're trying to put them into a box.
Right. So people, that's number 2 objection. Right? Isn't this manipulative and rude and patronizing, right? I've heard it all. I've heard it all. So
No,
this is really interesting because when Laurel and I were formulating the curriculum for Prison of Peace, one of the things that we were very concerned about was that if we taught people how to name emotions, that they would start using it to manipulate.
yeah,
And inmates are the most manipulative people in the world, right? They got nothing but time on their hands. So what else are they going to do? Turns out that that was a fear that did not materialize. If you listen to somebody and you truly name their emotions, it only works if you come from a place of authenticity.
yeah.
It doesn't, you can't manipulate with it. I mean, if you read Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference, he talks about this a little bit. And I do disagree a lot with what he says and how he talks about this stuff. And he does manipulate. He does try to use affect labeling or naming emotions in a manipulative way to get other people to do what he wants them to do. And I believe that although he had great success as an FBI hostage taker, he has much less success working with people because people can sense that they're being manipulated.
Yeah.
As a general proposition, though, when you name what somebody feels with no agenda other than to name what they feels, they don't feel manipulated. In fact, they feel deep gratitude that you're taking the time to really listen to them and hear them. And you'll hear it all the time. Thank you. You're really hearing me. This is the first
Yeah.
time I've ever been listened to before in my life. You get that all the time.
So Doug, let's talk about this 2-word technique and how does it work? And I'm curious to know, what are some of the objections that have come up in the people that you've worked with?
Excellent. So the basic technique is really simple. You simply recognize and name the emotional experience of the speaker from the speaker's frame of reference. That's why we use the you statement. You feel angry, you feel frustrated. What you don't want to do is you don't want to use an I statement. What I think you're feeling is anger, or I sense that you're angry. Because the moment you interject I into it, it becomes all about you and it's no longer about them. Now you're speaking from your frame of reference, not theirs. It doesn't
Okay.
work. The second thing you don't want to do is ask a question. Are you angry? And the reason that you don't want to ask a question is because you're dealing with a brain, a nervous system that's in threat mode. And when our brains go into threat mode, our prefrontal cortex shuts down. There's no more rationality. There's no more reasoning. There's no more critical thinking. And we are unable to answer that kind of a question. And all it does is create more frustration and anger. So don't use I statements. Don't ask questions. Simple you statements. You feel. Now, having said that, people always raise the same 3 objections when they're first learning this. Number 1, what if I'm wrong? My answer to that is it doesn't matter. Because if you're doing this properly using a you statement, the speaker, the upset person, will know that you're really trying to listen to them, and they'll be grateful for that. So they're not going to give you any pushback. Even if you are wrong, which is unlikely because our brains are really good at picking out emotions, believe it or not. It's not something you have to be trained in. Our brains know how to do it automatically. We just have to let it happen. But let's just suppose I say something like this. So James, man, you are really pissed off. You said, no, I'm not pissed off.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not pissed off. Oh, you're frustrated. You're not being listened to. You feel completely disrespected. You feel unappreciated, unsupported. Yeah. You're really worried and concerned. Yeah. And it's really making you angry. Yeah. What did I do? I started off with you being angry, pissed off. You denied it. I said, fine. You're frustrated. And I went through more emotions and what I was doing is helping your brain process what you were feeling until finally I could circle back to anger. And now your brain was in a place where it could process it. So you're really angry. Yeah. I was never wrong in my assessment. You just couldn't process the emotion yet.
Okay, but that's good. But what happens if you are wrong?
Then they're
See,
going to correct you. They're going to correct you. Supposing I say, James, you're really angry. And you say,
no, I'm not.
no, you're not angry. Okay, so you're upset and frustrated.
Okay. Yeah. I can see that.
Yeah. And you don't feel appreciated and you feel completely disrespected and you're just disgusted at what's going on right now.
Okay.
You just ignore it. Just keep going. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
And notice that you don't get upset.
Yeah.
So that's number 1. Don't worry about being wrong. It's not a problem. Number 2, aren't I manipulating somebody by affect labeling? Answer is no. Loyal and I tested this in the prison project. We were very afraid at the beginning that if we taught affect labeling, it could be used to manipulate. And incarcerated people can be pretty manipulative. We learned that no, you can't. If you don't do this the right way, it does not work at all. And you cannot manipulate another person. In other words, you can't change somebody's behavior, get them to do something that they don't want to do by affect labeling. What you're going to do is you're going to calm them down, but you can't change their behavior. They have to change their behavior themselves. So number two, it's not manipulative. It's not rude. It's not patronizing, even though it feels that way because we were taught as children not to interrupt, not to use statements, all this stuff. It's all cultural programming. None of it works. That cultural programming is wrong. And so we just have to
When
learn.
you say none of it works, is it none of it works in these high stakes,
Yes,
high emotional situations,
that's right.
or are you saying it doesn't work at all?
I'm saying that we obviously don't want to interrupt and be rude with people when we're talking. So the social rules we learned as 2-year-olds have applicability today.
Okay.
But in a high stakes, high emotion conversation, these rules don't work anymore.
And I think that has been the missing piece
That's right.
for me as we've been talking
Yes.
through this.
So we have to use different rules when we're doing this deep listening. We're not using the rules of conversation that say don't interrupt. We're using the rules of listening, which says name the emotions as they arise and don't worry if you are interrupting or not, because you're not, although you are physically interrupting what they're saying, it is not perceived as an interruption. It's perceived as deep listening and validation. And so it's weird to see how that works, but it works every single time.
Doing is you're interrupting their thought process. You're interrupting that emotional trigger by naming it.
I'm not so much interrupting it as much as I'm helping them process through it by naming it. I'm literally lending my prefrontal cortex to you for the 90 seconds it takes for you to get back online and start processing your own emotions. So I'm naming the emotions because otherwise, if you were not in a dysregulated state in your nervous system, you could name your own emotions and calm yourself down. But you can't do that because your prefrontal cortex is offline. I'm giving you my prefrontal cortex. I'm processing the emotions for you so that you can get back online. That's what's going on. So we've got the first two objections. One is, what if I'm wrong? Two, rude, manipulative. Third one, who the hell do you think you are, my therapist? Push. All right. When that happens, which is rare, it is very rare, but it does happen. Pat yourself on the back. Man, you just did a fantastic job. The problem is you were too good because here's what happens. When you name what somebody's feeling and maybe you're a little too aggressive or not quite subtle enough, imagine, I got my hand up here. Imagine this is the wall. And here we are on this side of the wall, right? And this is where the real James and the real Doug lies. And this is out here, this is what everybody sees. And we're very good about not letting people behind our wall because we learned that in childhood. The universe is an unsafe place emotionally to exist. So I build up a wall to protect myself. You affect label and you're like a superhero going right through that wall. And what does that do to some people? It scares them, frightens them. And so they go like this. They push you away. They push you outside their wall because it's too scary for them. And that's the reaction you get when somebody says, who are you? Don't do that stuff to me. Don't be my therapist. Who do you think? You think you're my therapist? Just means you were too aggressive with it. So the trick is don't apologize. Don't say anything. Just back off, drop it, come back 10 or 15 minutes later and just say, you're really angry, and make it really conversational. And they won't even know what you're doing. They will have completely forgotten that you pushed into them. And when you come back and you're more subtle and the more nuanced in the way that you label the emotion, you'll say, yeah, I'm really angry. And you go on. I see this all the time in mediations where I don't do it in the early days when I was just still teaching myself how to do this. I would get too aggressive and I would get this pushback and I'd back off. And 10 minutes later, I'd come back in and label the emotion again. And they were fine and they calmed down. So that's the third one. And so don't worry about it. Just recognize that you were a superhero. You did a great job. Too good. Come back and be more subtle next time. That's all.
Okay. All right. So what do you find that most technical leaders or engineering leaders need to work on most, or what do they consistently get wrong about the people that they lead?
They make an assumption about human nature that is foundationally in error, and that is that human beings are rational beings, that we're going around every decision we make, we're trying to maximize our utility, or we're using critical thinking skills or logic and reasoning, and this is how we are all the time. The truth of the matter is, this is not how we are all of the time. This is how we are all that we actually use that kind of deliberative process, what Kahneman and Stankiewicz call system two thinking. About 2 to 3% of our total conscious effort is devoted to that kind of thinking. Now, it seems like it's a lot more to us because, especially if you're an engineering person or a technical person, you were doing a lot of problem solving during the day. But most of that problem solving is not rational thinking. It's not reasoning. It's not logic. You're engaged in a lot of algorithmic thinking where you're applying formulas and procedures and processes. And a lot of that, especially as you gain more expertise, becomes fast, unconscious thinking, what we call system one thinking, where you just know how to do stuff because you've done it habitually and you can do it. But we're still not engaging in what would be called true deliberative thinking. Now, the problem is that any kind of thinking, well, I'll just say algorithmic and deliberative thinking are derailed very quickly. They're so high level in the prefrontal cortex that if the slightest disturbance to the prefrontal cortex knocks those systems offline. Now, here's what's going on. When you walk into a team meeting, for example, and let's say you're a team leader or a supervisor or even higher up, a director, a manager, or vice president, and you walk into a team meeting, every single brain in that room, no matter what their level of engineering talent is in every microsecond asking 3 questions. Am I safe? Can I trust you? Do I matter to you? Those are all emotional questions. And if the answer is no, then those people cannot process anything that you're going to tell them because their prefrontal cortex is offline.
And is that
Nervous system leadership.
nervous system leadership?
So
Okay,
what
let's
I'm
talk about
talking about is I want to give people, leaders, a new tool, a new way of thinking about your leadership. Don't abandon if you're really into the rationalist thinking. I'm not going to tell you to abandon it. I mean, if you go out and read the science, you'll see what I'm talking about. But I'm not going to take your toys away from you. Go ahead and keep thinking that way, right? Add this to your toolbox. Start thinking about your people as nervous systems first and rational thinkers second. Because it's the nervous system that controls the ability to think. And if the nervous system is dysregulated, the ability to think goes out the window. And the fastest way to re-regulate or to regulate a dysregulated system, somebody who's really upset, is to do this naming emotions. It's called affect labeling or naming emotions. That is the fastest way that I know to calm an upset brain. I've never seen anything. I don't know of anything that's any faster. I've never heard of anything that's faster, and it works. So as a leader, you're leading people, and those people have nervous systems, and your job is to keep those nervous systems calm so people can do their work.
You got 2 different types of scenarios. You have the one scenario where you're in a team meeting, maybe it's your executive team, someone wants to move in one direction, people are really butting heads. It is emotional. They're getting emotional in that situation. And then, I can definitely absolutely see the things that you've talked about, how it directly applies there because you are trying to intervene. You're there, you're naming that emotion, you want to move forward. Then you have, hey, we're just working through some things. And me as a leader, I want to lead this discussion with my team member. So,
Which is
do
good.
the same communication rules, leadership rules apply, or how would they apply?
So it depends on what's going on. If you take the first situation where you've got people butting heads, name their emotions. They don't feel heard. They don't feel respected. They're angry and frustrated, and they're worried and concerned. That's what's going on almost always. Just name them. You're really upset. You're frustrated. You're angry. You don't feel heard right now. You're feeling like you're being disrespected, and you're worried and concerned that you might take the blame for this. So, and they will immediately settle. Both people, and you name the emotion of the other person. How are we going to go about solving this problem? Ask the question. That's when you can ask a question. How do you want to solve this problem? And they will solve it for you. Once they're calm, they'll solve it for you. But as long as they fight to be right, They will be emotional, and nothing will get done, and your decisional velocity will slow to zero. Okay. Second situation. Maybe you're one-on-one with somebody, or you're in and you have to give people tasks, or you have to give instruction, direction, whatever it might be. That's one of the fundamental
Yeah.
uh, job title or job descriptions of a leader is to provide focus and direction and safety. And so you do that. But the first thing you do before you do that is you sense, what are people feeling in the room right now? Are they calm, or are they dysregulated? If they're dysregulated, you have to calm them. You have to re-regulate them, because they will not be able to take your instruction, direction, focus, whatever it is, unless their prefrontal cortex is completely quiet and online. And so you learn just how to walk into a room, and you can name the emotions of a group or of an individual, or you can even ask, so how's everybody doing today? What's going on? Do a quick check-in. People go around the room, you watch, you pick up on their cues. You say, you're really frustrated. Man, your kid threw a tantrum when you were walking out the door, and that was really upsetting. Stuff like that. Calm them down. And then talk about, all right, here's what we're going to be talking about today. We got to make a decision on X. And here's what I'm thinking. And I want your input on it. And then when people start giving you input, you do not shut them down. You listen. And if they're emotional, people start disagreeing with each other, then you go right to the emotion. You don't feel heard. You don't feel listened to. You don't feel respected. And then how should we solve this problem? Your
Okay.
meetings will go much faster. Your decisional velocity will accelerate, and people will, amazingly enough, because they feel safe and because they feel heard, they will collaborate, and they will be productive, and they will be engaged. And more importantly, they will be loyal,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
you took the time to listen to them.
So you've talked through this whole process. You've named the objections in moving forward and how to handle these tense situations. So where's the book? Like how can people
All right.
find out more, Doug?
Okay, first of all, my website is Dougnoll, DOUGNOLL.com. Ton of resources on the website. I've got a Substack, dougnoll.substack.com. Those are where I do really in-depth articles on what we're talking about today. So free to subscribe. Check that out. My fourth book is called De-Escalate: How to Calm an Angry Person in 90 Seconds or Less. And that's the handbook for doing everything that I've been talking about. My fifth book is coming out in September. I'm a Simon & Schuster author, and it's called Empathy Leadership. And in that book, I take everything that I've talked about today and I show how you apply it in leadership. Why naming emotions in leadership is so powerful. And I go through history and science and lay it all out, and I give tons of examples and tons of case studies. And so that's coming out in September, and you can pre-order it just about anywhere right now. All the pre-order sites are up. If anybody's listening to this and is really interested, you can reach out to me at doug@dougnoll.com. I'd love to talk to you. Come present to your team, talk to your team, come to conferences. My goal in life is to spread the word.
Yeah, and we're gonna put links to your website and your Substack in the show notes, and so we'll make sure that that is included. Doug, it's been really fun having this conversation with you, and I really do appreciate your time. But as we start winding down to a close, we typically will do this segment called the mic flip. So you're the interviewer and I'm the interviewee.
Okay.
What is one question that you have for me?
James, you're a highly educated man, and have a lot of business experience. What is the number one human systems problem that you've encountered that's been difficult for you? Not engineering, not a technical problem, but a human systems problem.
Companies will put frameworks and processes in place to handle and SOPs to handle all of the other functions within their organization, but they don't necessarily realize that humans are an essential part of the critical infrastructure for that organization and for that team. And so I think the biggest issue that I see is not treating the humans as a system, as an integrated part of what they're trying to produce or trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's been my experience too. Organizations look at human beings as Spockian cogs in a machine that do not have emotions, do not have problems, do not have nervous systems that go into dysregulation instantly. And they ignore all of that, assuming that if we have standard rules and procedures, everybody will follow them and we will have a quiet, non chaotic, perfect workplace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not true.
And I think part of what happens is that don't account for the emotions that happen in the midst of relationships.
That's right.
Because when you're getting stuff done, you're working with people and we are emotional and stuff happens and it rises up and we don't always know how to handle that.
And now we know 2 words: you feel.
You feel, Doug, you feel heard.
I feel heard. Thank you, James.
Hi, this is James, the coach in your corner. You just heard a powerful tool. Name the emotion, calm the brain, diffuse the moment, and it works. But before you start using it on everybody, everywhere, all the time, I want to give you something to think about. Naming someone's emotion out loud. You are angry. You feel unheard is a real tool. In high stakes, emotionally charged conversations, it builds trust fast. In everyday conversations, it can land completely differently. It can sound presumptuous, like you're diagnosing someone instead of talking with them. Same tool, different result. Because the moment that you're using it didn't call for it. So that's true of almost any tool that you ever pick up, not just this one. The trap isn't using a quote unquote bad tool. It's using a good tool that isn't fit for the purpose. A good tool isn't good everywhere. It's good for the moment it was built for. The skill isn't collecting more tools. It's knowing which one fits the moment that's right in front of you. So before you reach for that next tool, ask yourself these 2 questions. What kind of moment am I actually in? And what outcome am I trying to create? The answer tells you which tool that's in your toolbox will fit. Because here's the reality. A good tool in the wrong moment is the wrong tool. I'm Dr. James Bryant, the coach in your corner, and I want you to be great this week.